It's going. All right. It looks like we are live, and I want to welcome Eric Ott. Thank you for joining me this evening
Well, thank
to
you.
talk about supporting our small businesses. I know that it's been a really rough time lately for small businesses. And I should point out that Eric is the owner of Geneva Running Outfitters in town here in Geneva,
hmm
one of our fabulous shops right on State Street there. So yeah, I know it's been a rough go lately for small businesses, and I wanted to touch base with you, kind of get a sense of how things are going, what the impact has been like through the pandemic, and as we continue not really knowing what's happening, what's coming, but let's see what we can do from a policy level
hmm
and from a community level to continue to support our small businesses as best as possible. So since we're going to talk about policy and community, I figured we'd touch on the boring stuff first and get to the more fun stuff later.
Right.
So my first question for you, and feel free to share as much or as little as you feel comfortable sharing. But I know, a question that a lot of people have about our small businesses is what the process looked like in terms of being able to attain assistance.
hmm
We all heard about frequently the assistance that was put out both from the federal and state government. So were you able to secure assistance? I know the most common one was the PPP loans
hmm
that was out there. And if you were, what did that look like? And if not, um, what roadblocks prevented
Right.
accessing that kind of assistance?
So I think the first thing I will is start not necessarily was talking about whether or not we did or did not, but um, is how in my opinion, in talking to other business owners like mine, not like mine, retail, non-retail, restaurant, is that and let me start by saying this is just my opinion, based on what I've experienced and what I've talked to other people about, is that um, one of the main things is who it helped, and it helps people who need employees to continue their current business. It didn't necessarily help as much depending on how you structured your business.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a sole proprietor and you had one or next to no employees, a lot of people who structure the business as an LLC won't be on the payroll
Mm-hmm.
for tax reasons. So they in turn that PPP would not help them at all, because they have no payroll, and if they have no payroll, then they can't use that loan. And that, just personal, is a lot of people. I'm not saying no employees, but is a lot of people in Geneva,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure a lot of people on quote unquote Main Street USA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's the flip side where there are people who maybe would have structured their business as an S corporation. And sidebar, if people are watching this, and
Mm-hmm.
I am not an accountant, I am not anything like that. So if I say something that's not actually correct, it's just how it was explained to me. So I apologize. Um, that that they were able to take advantage of things if they were on the payroll. But regardless of that, one of the first things was, if I got that or if I applied for it, how much would it be? Um, which one of my employees? We had conversations with employees, is or we knew that they were full time and had a full time job somewhere else, and it was made known that. And these are again conversations with other owners throughout the country, much like ours, is they had to weigh the option of, if we do this, am I going to be throwing other people for a loop because they already have unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
um, and or are we even able to have employees working right now? Are
Mm-hmm.
we solely going online? What is the scenario right now? And if we do, am I just paying people to not do anything?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean not doing anything, but they literally, there's nothing for them to do per se of what their old job description would be. And
Right.
then on top of that, how much would it be? And then how much can I use for, how much of that can I use for other things? The 25% of that for, quite
Mm-hmm.
honestly, your rent, your utilities, things like that. So that was the big conversation that a lot of us had was, is this even going to be, and I hate to use the phrase worthwhile, but
Right.
that was the thing that a lot of people went through is, if I get this, and I shouldn't say all the hoops I have to jump through, but
Hmm.
that's another part of the answer. But is it worthwhile? Do my employees even want it?
Hmm.
And what else am I going to be able to use this for? And
Hmm.
from personal experience, there was a lot of unknown when this first came out. How much of it would you actually be able to use?
Right.
What are the specific requirements that you have to have it forgiven?
Right.
When you have to have that? If you get the loan, back in March, when do you have to start paying your employees? All these working parts that
Right.
were unknowns, and there were different requirements, feedback that I got from other businesses that we were talking to, the sharing information, where certain banks you talk to had certain requirements. Some wanted to see tax returns. It's all these different things. So, to no one's fault, it just was, again, my experience was not that it was made difficult to get one, but there were a lot of options weighing into it. Um,
Hmm.
but on the flip side, if you had someone that had 300 employees, and as opposed to 2, 3, 4, 5,
Hmm.
the picture might be extremely different, because your business might solely rely on being able to pay these people to produce a product. And if you can't do that, you're kind of out of luck.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting to hear the difference between the different types of businesses and how
Mhm.
they navigated all of those unknowns and questions. I don't. I recently learned about the added assistance through the small business development centers.
Mhm.
Is that something that you had been familiar with? I know the state added additional funding through those. We have. Mhm.
I have been aware of some of the grants that were being made, through the states, for certain businesses in certain areas that were probably disproportionately affected, in certain areas of the state. But I believe some, and I'm not all knowing on this, but I believe
Mhm.
some of them, like for example, businesses in Geneva wouldn't have qualified because it was particular, like rural areas. Like again, would have been disproportionately affected by this. So but that was all I was aware of. So
All right. And then just in case anybody who's watching is still trying to figure out what they're doing in navigating all of this, there was information to share that the PPP deadline has been extended to August 8th.
okay,
So if anybody's still considering that or looking at things now and thinking they might actually need that assistance for their business, that deadline has been extended. So my next question, discussion point, is still kind of around the whole idea of the PPP loans and how that all played out. And there was, I know most people probably remember that there was pretty significant outcry when people learned about some of the very large corporations
mhm,
benefiting from those PPP loans. Some of them actually felt pressured and gave the money back.
mhm,
But I've since heard that a number of small businesses, medium-sized businesses even, were not able to get that type of assistance. And so it drew a really clear line, I think, for people in looking at the difference between how policy affects larger and even medium-sized corporations and businesses versus smaller businesses.
mhm.
Maybe leaving you guys to fend for yourselves a little bit more and navigating all of those question marks and those unknowns and how to
Yeah,
proceed through that. Is that something that you see frequently when it comes to policy? Not even just this policy, but other policies at
that
the state
that's
level?
that's an interesting question, um, because it's something that does actually come up quite often.
Hmm.
And if there's anything I say that's not factually correct, please correct me if you know that it isn't. But it is my understanding that the definition of a small business is businesses with less than 500 employees. Um,
So
It,
I've seen different definitions. Some say 50 or fewer, and I think it
yeah,
might.
right. And even if it were 50, I'll use retail. A retail store with 50 full-time employees
Mhm,
would look extremely different than a retail store with 5 employees, just because of experience I've had in seeing these,
mhm,
and have different needs. And so with that in mind, yeah, there's times when, for example, if somebody has a few employees, and the example I gave before of someone who might be, hey, I'm running, this is my mom and pop shop, I'm running it, this is my whole life. Something like this rolls around, they lose revenue. They can't. There's a lot of different things they have to weigh. Do they get into their savings? I'm having to, not me, I'm saying hypothetically. Okay,
mhm,
I'm having to use my savings that is personal, as opposed to being able to utilize one of these options, the PPP, because of how maybe I'm not on the payroll or things like that. So I'm seeing, wow, I'm having to spend my own money on this, whereas somebody else, to no fault of their own, is able to utilize these forgivable loans, and I can't.
mhm,
And I feel like there's probably a lot of people who um, feel the weight of that, and the unknown of what's going to be happening a month from now. Well, back in March, how long is this going to last? 5 months, so almost 5 months already, of varying degrees of being open, varying degrees of ability to sell, and how much longer. And obviously, we want to be safe. We want to be able to be realistic. Everyone wants things to be back to normal, but having the realism of what's the most appropriate approach, and how you can
mhm,
handle that, is always, at least for me, at the forefront of everything that we're trying to do. But I think, among my discussions, it's the unknown.
mhm,
If I take this loan out, that's from the Small Business Association, and I have to eventually pay for it, the conversations that I've had are, yes, you're never going to think that you're going to close, but in these business plans, and everything you think about, if I'm
right.
taking a loan out for $50,000 and stuff really hits the fan, and now I'm on the hook for that, a lot of people, one person in particular, phrased it as, I'm buying money.
Mhm,
And again, it's the realism of the real, of always owning a business, is these things do come up. But for the most part, something like this was out of someone, taken out of your hands. There's always the unknown, but
mhm,
um, and there was some cool ideas. Getting to your question about policy is,
mhm,
there were people who had to pivot, had to say, okay, I didn't normally sell online because there was really no reason. But for some industries, that's a big barrier to get through, of how can I create an online presence at this point,
mhm,
when money is scarce. Am I going to take out a loan for this? Somebody brought up, it's like, couldn't they have grants to create an online presence for particular stores that are at a, because we're not going to give them money and say, here's $50,000 you can put in your bank account, which,
right.
but if you can say, here's this amount of money to create this online presence that will benefit you, will benefit other people. That was one I was like, oh, that's actually not a bad idea. Um, and anyways, I'm rambling on, but
Oh, that's
the biggest thing that I wanted to repeat was, from what I've talked about with people and myself, was just the unknown.
mm,
What can you do to hedge against that? You've done everything you can business wise.
right.
Um, and sorry, I thought kids were coming in the front door.
Okay.
Um, and I think, if, as well as the differentiation between business sectors. I know all of this is kind of going down the rabbit hole, but a retail store is not the same as true service oriented as manufacturing, and all these different avenues. Yet
Mhm.
all of this was treated the same, and that's difficult as well.
Yeah, that is something that I thought about a lot through all of this. The one size fits all kind of model, when businesses can vary greatly, like you said,
Mhm.
from number to what they're providing to, any number of different factors that could influence those decisions. And I think you brought up an interesting point about just accessing the information that would make it more easy to make decisions in situations like that. And I think that I would love to see, a one-stop shop place for small businesses to go and get that information and find all those pieces and maybe those grants, as well as information about training and loans, or just, the information you need for starting a business too. I think it would be great to see something at a state level that provides that assistance to small businesses, because honestly, the small businesses that we have, I mean, they make our community in Geneva for sure, and in most towns around here. So I think anything that we can do to support them and make sure that they're, accessing the resources that are there.
And there's some good resources, and the small business association, excuse me, at Wabansie Community College, they've always provided good resources. But in a time like this, when you have, I don't know the statistic of how many, but when you have one single office that is, quite honestly, probably very much overwhelmed, it gets to be a little daunting. And I see we have little questions on the side here. And I want to clarify the statement I made before about an online presence. I was strictly referring to like an online store, and the amount of money it takes to do that. There's a lot of cool things, especially in our industry, that businesses have come along, and it's almost like a plug and play, where they take your unique product codes, your UPCs, in your inventory, and it populates everything. Because for us, one of the big barriers to have that online sales presence is it's considered a completely different contract with your vendors if you want to sell. And there's a whole lot of stipulations about what can be prices and how everything has to look. And that was always a massive barrier. But now there's these companies that are coming together and working with these vendors and saying, hey, you want to buy our service, this is how much it is a month. We will take all of your data, package it up, put it on a nice online store, and there you go. So that's kind of more what I was referring to, because it's a good point that businesses can create an online presence free through social media. So yeah.
Yep. And actually, we'll probably touch on that here soon. So I know that we're really lucky in the Fox Valley to have so many incredible small businesses that give us character, give us substance. They give back so much to the community. I can't count probably the number of fundraisers that I've been involved in where I know that we can count on small businesses to contribute to those fundraisers frequently. I know your store, Geneva Running Outfitters, I often see all the fun runs that you do and the engagement with kids and all those programs, and I think it really adds character and benefit to our community. So thinking about that and thinking about people's strong desire to support small businesses as best as possible, I wanted to talk through maybe a couple ways that the community can continue to support our small businesses. I know that there was a big splash in social media at the beginning of the pandemic in terms of especially supporting restaurants.
Right.
I know that's fizzled a little bit, and I know restaurants are open now, and so things are picking up. But I think it's still important to make sure that we're focusing on continuing to support our local small businesses. Do you think that the support is continuing to grow in the community? Do you see any change in people's responsiveness to supporting our local businesses?
Well, one of the unique things, at least for Geneva, that I've always found is since we opened, we've always had people say we want to shop in Geneva, or more appropriately local. I don't know if that was a distinct, understanding that the money spent in, a municipality, the majority, more so than online. And obviously I know some of that has changed with sales tax that's collected online, et cetera. But, it's different. You have employees that live in the town and work in the town, and the money they make will stay in the town. We've always had people say we want to shop local. So with that in mind, I don't know if I've seen any more so that we want to shop local. with the exception of we've seen more now people saying, hey, we want to make sure we get stuff. We know things are tough. I wanted to make sure I got running shoes now as opposed to 4 months from now. And so I've seen some really cool things done online where they're trying. There's a Facebook group where they're trying to highlight local businesses and saying, hey, let's go spend money here, not because this place is special, but let's spread our money around. And I feel that's very important because it's purposeful spending. We all have a finite amount of money to spend, and I think it really is important to say, hey, you know what? I like this store. I want them to stay around. I like what they do. I like what they provide for our community. So let's spend money there. And I think we forget that sometimes. I don't mean guilty, like people, it's bad, but I think we forget that, yes, people who live in the community do work at, national chains, and we need to understand that as well. But if we have opportunities to, put your money where your mouth is, right? But that at the same time, as a small business owner, that doesn't mean I'm entitled to anything. That doesn't mean somebody has to buy something from me. Obviously I need to earn their business, but I think this is also an important time to be creative amongst consumers, like the example I gave. What did they call it? A cash mob, and they're going to go spend money at particular places, and because honestly, if this is a time we're going to see that people have their fixed costs, people have their accounts payable, and if those bills can't get paid and they're not making the sales, especially now, things will start to close. And that's not me being Debbie Downer. That's just what it is.
Absolutely. So like many others, and probably many people watching today, I do love to shop in our local businesses in Geneva and support them as much as possible. So I wanted to kind of go over with you some of the ways, including obviously where we spend our dollars, but all of the different ways that we can support our small businesses and help them through this time of recovery and make sure that we're putting our money where our mouth is. And I know a lot of us talk about, our dollars speak for the kind of world we want to live in, whether, boycotting certain businesses that don't support our values, or supporting our local community and the people and friends that we have in the community. So what are some ways that you can see that would be helpful for people to continue to support our local businesses?
Well, I'll touch on something that I didn't think of until it was made known to me, and it makes perfect sense now, is that, in our, there's 6 degrees of separation at least in my industry, is that we talk about what brings in business to our store. And, a few times a year, we have fairly large packet pickups. Not just, there's nothing wrong with a local 5K, a couple hundred people come in, but there's a few races where, people from 30, 40 states come in, different countries, they're looking to buy stuff. Those events aren't happening because for reasons. Some of these races are going virtual. Some of them are happening, but at the same time, we can't have 50, 60 people in the store at one time. So the point I'm getting at is, it was made known to me that if some of these, and this is just in my field, if some of these events aren't happening, we think, oh, I don't want to do a virtual event because, it's not the same feeling. And a lot of people feel that way, and I don't think it's wrong. But if we don't participate in those events, they might not be back. And I think we look at it as, what value am I getting for my money? But much like other things, sometimes you pay for things because it's the right thing to do. Now, I'm not saying you're still going to pay $60 or $50 or $40 for a 5K, because a lot of them are a lot less. But that has a trickle-down effect. If the Chicago Marathon isn't happening this year, there's a lot of stores and a lot of businesses that rely on the expo to bring in money. They're going to have to scramble to figure that out. So if there's a local race that is holding it virtually, if that race doesn't happen next year, then there might be a local store that doesn't benefit from that. Like, let's say there's a coffee shop that really benefits from a local race, and this is just a hypothetical, and
Right.
that race doesn't happen next year. Now that coffee shop isn't seeing that influx of business from the next year. So I
Mhm.
guess my biggest thing
Mhm.
is in the sense of spending, if possible,
Mhm.
if people are not adversely impacted or they need to make these decisions, um, try to this is just my try to spend your money as normally as possible,
Mhm.
in the sense of, if you normally get running shoes, personally try to do that. If you have the money to still do these events, still do one of those virtual events, because we're seeing it with some of our vendors that when one domino falls, I mean, it can impact things, 3 or 4 degrees down the line. So I don't
Mhm.
know if that was very precise and succinct, but I think the gist of what I'm saying is, every dollar you spend means a lot, and it
Mhm.
means a lot to the place you're spending it. It means a lot to the employees there. I know every time, especially now, then when people purchase something, we're going out of our way to say thank you.
Mhm.
It means a lot, because we know that people are dramatically impacted by what's going on, and possibly losing jobs,
Absolutely.
greatly decreased income. And to me, it's very meaningful when somebody decides, especially now, to come in and spend money. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that that trickle down effect, especially
Hmm.
for those types of events that it might be easy to say, well, I don't have to run this
Right,
time, or
right.
just
And
skip this one.
and
But it's interesting that to put those pieces together
yeah,
too, and think about there are probably many events similar, maybe not
right.
even
It,
races necessarily, but a lot of things that have gone virtual that maybe we have Zoom fatigue, but maybe it is still important to
right.
try to participate in some way.
And I think that can also, like, when I say spend money normally, I guess what I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be like, if it's about us, let's say, like back to school, whatever
Hmm.
that means now. If somebody's normally buying clothes from a local clothing store, now they're not,
Hmm.
what does that mean? And so
Right.
when I say spend normally, is if you can, if you're like, if there's no Chicago Marathon or it's virtual, and like, I'm not going to do it now, but we normally had an influx of people buying shoes and this and that, and now they're not, that's a
Hmm.
huge thing.
Hmm.
If people are normally buying back to school stuff, or they're normally getting their hair cut at a certain time, again, all within the confines of safe and risk management in terms of COVID. But I guess that's what I mean by
Hmm.
trying
Yeah,
to, because yeah, because
it makes
people
sense.
plan by that. Yeah.
Absolutely. What about some other ways outside of, obviously spending our dollars where we have our value, or with our values? But what about other ways that we can support small business? Maybe not necessarily even through shopping, but I know we had one person comment about the social media presence of small
Yeah.
businesses, and I've seen some ideas around all the different ways that we can support
I
small business that
I've
way.
seen some, I mean, just kind words, to a friend. I just had someone come in to buy some stuff the other day, yesterday, I think. Um, and I was basically told, hey, I've never been here before, but my friends, I'm going to start running, and my friend said I needed to come in. So this person was not persuaded, but given, hey, an idea, you need to come in.
Mhm.
And just simple things like that, kind words on social media, like, hey, I had a great experience at this restaurant.
Mhm.
And I think, and this is my opinion next, but I think we're so used to instant gratification, for the positive, or for instant, I want my voice heard, that
Mhm.
sometimes I don't think we realize what our words mean, both in the positive and the negative. And I would encourage people in this, that if you have something positive to say, get it out there. Let people know. If you have something negative to say, talk to the business. Let
Mhm.
them rectify it. Let them make it better.
Mhm.
And I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do, but that means a lot. If I did something wrong and I didn't make it right, or I mean, it wasn't right, I would want somebody to let me know. I would like the chance to make it better before, someone is spraying it all over the place.
Right.
And I'm not saying people don't have that right, but I think just like money matters, I think words matter, and they can be
Absolutely.
very powerful,
Hmm.
both for the positive and negative.
Yep, that makes sense. And I've thought that frequently myself, that it it definitely helps businesses a
Hmm.
lot have positive reviews, but it can damage them a lot too to have
Hmm.
negative reviews, and a lot of those things can be worked out.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think people
And
are
I'm not
reasonable.
saying, those negative experiences didn't happen,
Right.
or someone doesn't have a reason to be upset. But I would just, both as a consumer and as a business owner, I think it's just, it's more constructive. And I know I personally feel really badly when I
Mhm.
mess up and I want to make it right. And I would
Yep.
assume most small, I don't
Yeah.
want to assume, but I would assume most small business owners would feel the same way. So.
Hmm. Yeah. So I know there are many places that people can leave reviews,
Mhm.
and share, like you said, share good experiences with friends, with neighbors, through social media,
Yeah.
like that, to support and boost our small businesses, and continue sharing that support on social media, so that people's awareness doesn't fade, and we continue to support the small businesses that we rely on and that we appreciate in our community. So I don't see any more questions from people watching. But I do want to thank you again, Eric, for joining me this evening. I learned a lot from you, and I'm excited to take some of that new understanding about the differences, and the questions that you
Yeah.
have, and those experiences that you've shared with me, and keep all of that in mind as I continue to research policy, and hopefully get elected and represent you, and make sure that small businesses are prioritized.
Yeah, and it's just always great to be able to talk about this, because I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know, and the
Mhm.
only way to learn is talk to people and to gain information, and and it's wonderful to have somebody to listen to that, and yeah.
Always happy to listen.
Yes,
All
yes. Well, thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you, Eric. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.